Hi guys, it's Andy and welcome to the future. So in the previous video we've created the basic markup for the first section along with the basic styles here, and now it's time to update it a little and create the other markup for the page. So let's start from the text update, because as you see here the font is totally different to what we have in the resulting page, and to do that let's create a font family property on the body tag. And that means that we're changing the font of the whole document because we assigned it to the body. Let's set its value to Helvetica, since this is a font name of a font which is actually present on Windows and Mac operating systems by default. The other thing about the font is that it's pretty thick right now and we don't need that. So to change it we can use the font weight property and let's specify it to 200. But as you see, not all the text changed right now. That's because the default heading styling is actually overrides the body font weight. So let's go to the H2 now and let's give it the font weight of 200 also. And as you see now, it's changed. I think at this point we are actually ready to go to the next section. So let's go to the index file and let's see what is going on here. We have an H2 heading and 3 repetitive items. So to do that, let's go to the section and create an H2 tag first, and let's call it highlights. So the text color is white now as well as the background color, and it's a little bit hard to read now. So to change this, let's assign the class to the highlights section, and I will name it highlights. We can use it now in main CSS to give a different hex code to the color property, and I will use the same as for the background of this first section, except if you want to change it you can play with the palette by pressing Command E or Ctrl E, as I said before. So another thing is the highlights in the lowercase now and not in the middle, while we need it in the uppercase and in the middle here. And to make all the letters big you can actually use caps lock or to do that, but the more gentle way is select the H2 tag inside the highlights section and first of all put it to the middle, which is text align if you remember from the inline block elements, and set it to center. To change the text case you can use text transform property of the H2 tag, and there are a lot of different values here like capitalize or full width as you see, but what we need is uppercase now. And in the design, the H2 tag has an offset on the top and on the bottom, and we can create the offset by using padding rule, which we used for the first section, and specify 50 pixels as well. Please keep in mind that my resolution can be different to yours, and I'm just selecting the values that are actually suitable for me according to the example I have here. But you can select whatever you want for your pixel sizes as well as for colors. Just play with it. The more you will play, the more you will learn. Now it's time to create the rest of the markup for this section. And as you see in the example, we have 3 similar items with a bit difference inside, so we can actually use unordered list for that. Well, unordered because we don't need the order at all. So let's create a list with 3 list elements inside. And since our project images has numbers in it, starting from 1 to 3, we can use a dollar notation to use the number of an element inside the list in our notations, because we want to put an image along with h3 tag inside, and we can specify the source for the image with the emmet markup, and the source will be image because of the image folder /p $.png, and then we want to close the string notation, except we don't need a $sign near the list element because this will bring to an error. Oh, let's see. So as you see, the list element opening and closing tags has the number near it, so we don't need that first $sign here, we just need it near the image. And when I'm pressing tab, as you see, all the images have their numbers here. That's because $sign takes the number of the element inside the list and puts it inside the expression, in our case the source of the image. The alt attribute of the image tag is the alternative to the image if the image is not displayed. So for example, if I will put Yoda image and run link to the image, as you see, this sign is displayed. So this attribute is actually necessary for every image tag, but you don't need to fill it. So just remember to put it on your image tags, or if you're using Emmet, as you see, it creates this attribute for us. Don't forget to change the image back if you tried that with me. And now it's time to style our list. Since it's inside the highlights and this would be the only list, we can actually go to the main CSS and select it through the highlights selector. And as you see, there are dots on the left of the image and basically on the left of each list element. So to remove them, I will use list style attribute and I will select none to remove all that. And by default, lists has the padding of 25 pixels or 50 for different browsers, and I will choose 0 padding for the whole list. And for better understanding, let's go to the index page, fill our H3 headings. With all the markup for this section, we can actually go to main CSS and finish our styling. And the first thing you want to do is put all the list elements inside the highlights section in the same line, as we did with image and description for the first section. For this property, we will of course use the display inline block and align everything on the same line as we did for the first section. And the reason why we're not actually putting this selector to these properties is because the highlights is a separate section and you want to keep all the code for the separate sections in their place inside the file. This way it will be easier to navigate through it when you want to make some changes afterwards. At this point, first two elements are taking full width of the page, or most of it. So to avoid such thing, you want to restrict the width of the element to 28%. As you see now, they are aligned on the same line, except the images are actually overlapping one over another because they are bigger than the list element itself. To change that, let's select the image tag inside the highlights and restrict its width to 100% of the containing element. So the reason why we're actually selecting the image inside the li element is because image is something you will meet often on the website. And that is why you want your selector to be as strict as possible. As you already know, to align those elements to the center, we'll use text align property, and our list elements are in the center now, except the h3 tag inherits that from the ul tag. And let's select the h3 tag, and text align property should be left on this selector. The next step will be to select the second li element, and this will be done by nth child selector, as you see, and in brackets we can specify the number of the element we need, which is second. Now we can give an offset for this element with margin right property of 5% and margin left property of 5%. So the nth child selector allows us to choose one of the sequence of elements. Like here we have 3 li tags, but we want only second among all those li tags. At this point, some of the selector's properties might seem confusing to you, but we are just meeting them for the first time. The more precise look I will give to every property in the CSS course. The purpose of this website, as I told you, is to show what you can do with all the knowledge you achieved. But the educational part is to show you how the websites are created. You create an HTML markup and then give it some outlook by using CSS. You create an HTML markup for the structure and then create CSS to give it some good looking. And CSS is basically selectors with properties and values for them. The next thing present in the example is the shadow under each list element. To create it, you want to use the box shadow property, and it has 4 parameters you need to specify. The first one is horizontal offset of the shadow, the next one is vertical offset, the third one is the blur for the shadow, and the last one is actually color if you want to change it from the one is inherited from the color property. I will use the light color for the shadow, and these values I want to be different, of course. To see how the property works, I suggest you to change every parameter to whatever you want, and you can actually specify the negative units for the first two parameters. You cannot make the blur negative because it's present or absent, which is 0. In the example, each list element has a rounded corner. To change this, it's possible to use border radius property with 20 pixels value, except for now we have only bottom corners rounded, while the top ones remain the same. That happens because the image actually goes off the container canvas. To hide all the overflowing elements, we can use overflow property with hidden value. And as you see now, the image is cut on the edges of the containing element. Now we can style the h3 tag by removing the default margin from the element and adding 20 pixels padding with the smaller font size. Now it looks more or less as an example, except I want to make the h2 padding smaller. At this point, this section is ready. It's been a lot of information at this point, and I totally get that most of the properties you will not remember from the first time, but I will definitely explain each of them at the CSS course. I encourage you to play with this website as much as possible. Try to change values and delete some of them to see how HTML and CSS are interacting with each other. This will bring you to an understanding of CSS rules, and that will be just a matter of time to learn the properties and values they can contain. Thanks for watching, guys, and the next video will put a point to creation of Masters Yoda website. I hope you'll enjoy it.